Yes, my good people, welcome back to our YouTube channel. Naona mambo yamechemuka hapa nchini Kenya watu wangu. Wakati ambapo Ndindi Nyoro anamalizana na mambo ya finance, mambo ya budget, mambo ya madeni ya China hapa nchini Kenya, utakuja kuona ya kwamba governor wa Matangi wa Kiambu County anakamatwa na kuwekwa ndani. Na ndio kitu itakuja kuwa afadhali hapa nchini Kenya because guys, nilikuambia kwamba hii mambo ya governance inakuja ikiwa hii mambo ya governance kuibia counties imekuwa too much. The other time nilikuambia jinsi ambavyo huyu Boni Halwali alikuwa na expose governor Barasa wa Kakamega County kwamba saizi anatumia pesa za Wakenya vibaya Kakamega County. And the same to governor wa Matangi pia. That's why unaona ameweza kuwa arrested. Unaona watu wangu, na anafaa kuchunguzwa zaidi. The same to Busia County. Nilikwambia Ojamong alikuja kafilisisha county ya Busia. Alikuwa anajenga Uganda, anapeleka mali yote Uganda because ako pa yeye ni resident wa pale Uganda pia. Unaona watu wangu, and that's why unaona Ojamong alitoka pale akafunguliwa kesi ya 10 billion Kenyan shillings. And now mambo yamechemuka hapa nchini Kenya. I want to pay attention to Ndindi Nyoro, jinsi ambavyo anajaribu kuexpose ama anajaribu pia defending William Ruto, and he is also trying to uncover siri iliyoko kwa mambo ya China na Kenya. Because guys, tuliambiwa na John Mbadi kwamba madeni ya Kenya saizi ni 11 trillion. But now Ndindi Nyoro anajaribu kukanusha, kumaanisha he is trying to defend William Ruto. So ndo watu wanakuja kusema kwamba huyu jamaa inaweza kuwa ni project ya William Ruto ama vipi. Kabla usikize, ensure ume like video kama kawaida, na nasema asante sana kwa hiyo like yako. Wewe ni mtu wa nguvu zaidi. So nasema thanks so extensive kuendelea kusupport hii channel. Guys, wale wageni ambao wanatazama kwa mara ya kwanza, kwa mioyo mikunjufu ensure mna subscribe pale chini. Na ni kwa vile leo niko mbali kidogo, so nimeweza tu kukurekodia ili uweze kutambua nini kinajaribu kufanyika hapa nchini Kenya. Kwa hivyo guys, without wasting time, listen to Ndindi Nyoro kisha tuendelee zaidi. Sikiza.
You may start some stories sometime later in the future, they also price you accordingly. So they let you money fine, but you also pay a commensurate cost for it. Now the other thing I want you to look at is this. You can talk to China and they agree. China, you know, people imagine China is the #1 lender to Kenya. No, that's not true. The Kenyan debt to Kenya, the Chinese debt to Kenya is actually less than 10%. It's only that Chinese debt is usually project finance, which is more expensive, and commercial. So they become more expensive. But there are some other parameters I provoke you to go and check. Out of our CFS, payments of interest rates of 1 trillion, approximately. 750 billion this current financial year. It is now over 800 billion. The one we budgeted was 750. I think it's now hovering around 800 billion by close of the year. But let me use 750. Please get this point. 1 trillion shillings is for payment of interest rate. 750 billion is for domestic debt servicing. So, external debt, we are talking about around 200 billion shillings. There is a point I want to derive there. Now, issues around talking about debt. You know, when I'm talking about debt, I'm talking about changing terms, because I am sure 100% we may end up there as a country. So when you talk about changing terms of debt, you may change externally. Now come now back home. 750 billion is the biggest ticket of payment of interest rate in our country, in our economy. Now, can you start thinking as a Kenyan what that is? Can you imagine a meeting being called by the National Treasury at some point? Like the way we are here, there is a meeting that has been convened. Nimewaita tuongee mambo ya hii deni. Sio kama wa Kenya. Lakini wale watu wamekopesha serikali pesa. I want you to start seeing that conversation, what it means. The 750 billion Kenya shillings we are paying domestic interest rate is owed to who? Is owed to banks, is owed to insurance companies, is owed to bond holders, even normal Kenyans. Now, changing terms means what? Are you calling us to increase the yield? What is the likely conversation that is likely to be around there? Is about postponing paying you. That's number one. They can only be two things actually. Postponing paying you, that's number one, or paying you less. Now think about it this way. You are a bank with shareholders expecting you to release results by end of the financial year. Huyo mtu anasema nini akikuita hiyo mkutano? In other words, those are the things that we need to think about, because the dominant thing we have to think about as a country is debt. And I can guarantee you, we can do all the other things correct. Any small indication that we are not able to service is catastrophic more than any other thing we are doing as a country. I think I leave that there. Umeshika what I'm trying to say. And you know, they say restructuring is the first chapter of default, because the same analogy I gave, if I owe you money, three of you, and I've called you one to talk, what are we talking about? We are talking about I may not pay you next month, I'll pay you 3 months from now. So I'm restructuring. So what if in those 2 months I've not paid you, what have I done? Haven't I defaulted? Now lastly, I want to talk about revenue. There is something called revenue maximizing tax rate. That is a term that should be given a department in the Department of the National Treasury. Revenue maximizing tax rate. You know, many times we confuse that you add tax rate, you get more revenue. It is a fallacy. At some point you get to Rafa's curve and it starts descending. That the more you increase, the more you distort economic decisions. So if I was to buy a car, I see you've already paying for my money, so I hold back that expenditure. Holding back that expenditure means even the retro you could have gotten, you'll not get it. That is something I have seen we have also to take very seriously as a country. So that even as we make tax policies and revenue policies, let's look, and it cannot be arbitrary. I mean, you cannot just sit down and say, now tunapeleka hii kodi hapa, you get more money. There has to be some research based on it. There has to be some thorough analysis based on it. There has to be thorough sampling. There has to be thorough work in it by coming up with a rate that maximizes revenue without making people distort their economic decisions or market to distort its decision making. We did the finance bill of 2023, which was fairly debated as the one for last year. Now, this is the most shocking thing. The Kenyan revenue to GDP ratio in the year 2023-2024 was around 16%. I want you to see the trend. In the year 2019-2020 was around 15%. In the year 2023, that year, was it 14 point something percent. In this current year, up to date, it is around 14.7%. Now, when you do robust revenue raising measures in terms of policy, they should come with commensurate revenue from it. Kodi ikiongezewa, for example, pay, there should be commensurate revenue in the basket of revenue from this money you have taxed. Tunashikana hapo? Why is it that even when you raise the rate, then in the basket of money, there is not that money? Why is it that the revenue growth in Kenya never noticed Finance Bill of 2023? That the graph, if you are given a graph without labeling, you will not pinpoint those 2 years. You will not see them. Because the revenue never changed other than the ordinary changes it usually has. I'm talking about that analysis of revenue maximizing tax rate. Why is it that even when we have a very corrosive, when we have a very debatable policy around tax and it passes, why is it that we cannot see this money in the other side? Possibly this could be the reason. You come, maybe you are earning some money here, the government takes it at the payee level. Napenda kuita unakatia stima kwa transformer. You know, when money is deducted from your payee, ni kama stima imekatiwa kwa transformer. So it actually never reaches your hands. Now when you cut money from the payee level, when you cut money at that level, let's say in my disposable income, you already knock off 8,000 shillings from it. That is the money you are sending your uncle somewhere in Nyamira. That is the money you are sending your auntie somewhere in Kisii. Now, you no longer send them that money. So they no longer buy that sugar they were buying through the transfer you are doing. So you have cut money here at the payee level, but the same money denies you correction at the VAT level. Those are some of the things we have to work around, so that even as we increase taxes, then we are not handicapping the same revenue collection. There is another thing I want to talk about very briefly, which you have to be vigilant as a country. In Nigeria is one of the economies, by the way, which are very good. It has very rich people in terms of, in Africa, you only get black billionaires, majority of them being domiciled in Lagos, Nigeria, out of Nigerian money. Now, Dangote cement, BOA cement, they grew around what? You come and put in some duty for imports of the commodities they manufacture, primarily cement. By that time, when you put duty on cement, I'm using Nigeria, you end up having a big conglomerate and several of them. Number one, of course, we know Dangote cement, BOA cement, there is also Lafarge and the others. So now you cut off imports. It's a good thing, fine. The question is, for how long? You cut off, cutting off meaning you build a wall of tariff, not necessarily a non-tariff barrier, but a tariff one. So you put in a wall. This wall should incentivize this local production to be efficient, so that their products can compete with the global ones. But then you overstay with that policy. So Nigeria, by beginning of this year, had the highest cement prices in Africa. Can you see that oxymoron? The biggest producers had the highest cement prices in Africa and had the highest cement margins almost in the world. You protect an industry that must come in with an analysis for how long, and there should be government follow-up on when we protect you, up to when can Kenyans continue to pay more for you to get efficient. Because I am here as a consumer. in Kenya. The cement prices in Kenya today have gone up. So what am I doing as a Kenyan buyer of cement? I am actually subsidizing as a Kenyan the production of the producer of cement. I am paying a higher price. It is a good thing. It may end up employing many more Kenyans. But the reason for protectionism must not be for longevity of production in this company. It should be up to the point where this company gets competitiveness in competing with any other cement from any other country. If I can import cement, let's say from Mozambique, I'm just using an abstract example, or from South Africa. If I can import a bag of cement from South Africa and it gets to Taita Taveta at a lower price than the cement being produced several kilometers away from that place, I mean, that's also a paradox. Protectionism all along must not be for the benefit of the producer. It must be for the benefit of the economy. And that is why it has to be time-bound. Very lastly, some of the things I think we should do as a country.
Boni Galwale, you are the one who introduced President William Samoei Ruto to Western Kenya politics. That's why you are UDA senator in Kakamega, in a region where all the seats were taken by ODM. What do you have to tell Kenyans about the kind of president William Samoei Ruto is?
Your Excellency, we respect you. We voted for you. Mimi ndio nilikuleta Luyaland. Sasa sisi tunataka tukikutana na wewe tusizungumze mambo yenye unataka kufanya. Tuzungumze na wewe mambo yenye unafanya. Hizi barabara miaka imepita 3. The story is the same. Tutafanya. We have appealed to the president. Maneno ya tutafanya, mwaka wa kwanza imeisha, wa pili imeisha, wa tatu unaenda. Hiyo siasa sio siasa ya kutegemea. We want politics that deliver. Mahoba kukuba wala na hola. Niba mwenye nenda banga.
That is UDA Senator Kakamega Boni Galwale, who introduced Ruto to Western Kenya politics. Anaambia watu wa Western Kenya, they are so tired of the kind of mediocrity leadership that Ruto is showing. That now for the third year, Ruto has been calling Western leaders to the State House. Each year, tutafanya, tumetenga, tumeweka mikakati. On the same roads. Wanarudi second year, wanaambia sasa Mr. President, surely, hizi barabara last year tulisema the same thing. Anaambia sasa, tumeweka mikakati. Tutafanya, tumetenga. That year, before Ruto ende Msangarire, wakamwambia, now president, you are so tired. What is this now? Watu wanaona nyumbani kama si ni waongo. You know, Ruto doesn't have conscience ya kusema ni muongo or something. Ruto can lie even 1,000 times the same person na haonagi ubaya. Then akamwambia msijali. This time and then muambie tumetenga, tumepanga, tumeweka mikakati. Now Boni Galwale is saying that he's so tired of that nonsense, that hata hajui kama wakito State House tena as Western leaders kama ataenda, because anajua ni the same stories za tumetenga, tumeweka mikakati. And he's asking Kenyans, which among you Kenyans is ready to go with this nonsense till 2032? Because you people think we hate Ruto, my friend. This guy is a mediocre. Look at the papers today. The papers today saying costly tours of Ruto. Alitoka Nyanza, akaenda Western, akaenda sijui Erwak, Modagashe, Mount Kenya. Right now Mount Kenya, most of the shopping centers, watu wamelewa kulewa. Why? Because pesa, taxpayers billions zilikuwa zinatumika huko. Watu walikuwa nakuja, mtu anaulizwa, wewe unafanya kazi gani? Anasema mimi maybe kazi yangu ni kuuza duka, napataka 3,000, ambapo usijali hizo pesa utapewa. Mwingine anasema mimi sifanyagi anything, wewe utapewa 1,500. Walimu wanakatwa pesa, madaktari wanakatwa pesa, zenye hata wanalipwa vibaya, zikuje zitumwe on this kind of nonsense. For the last 3 years now, Ruto has been on top of the eco. And you Kenyans are not tourists in this country. You know what I'm saying is true. But he's not even launching a toilet. Kazi ni kuli-launch things that even launched in 2012. Anakuja tu ana relaunch. Anafukua mpaka mapipes zenye zilikuwa